The ceiling was a blur of white and light and sound. I blinked against it, but my eyes burned. A tube pressed into my nose. My ribs stabbed at every breath like something sharp had settled inside me and refused to move. A voice broke through, low, steady, practiced. "You're in the hospital, Ms. Wakefield. You were in a car accident. There was internal bleeding. We had to operate to relieve pressure on your lungs." I tried to speak, but nothing came out. Just a whisper. The nurse adjusted something near the IV line. Her hand was firm, but I saw the hesitation in her eyes. "We needed consent before surgery," she said softly, like someone delivering news at a funeral. "We called your son. Mason." Of course they called Mason. I nodded, slowly, grateful. He would have come quickly. He would have. The nurse looked away as if the truth stung too much to meet. He said, "If she dies, just let me know. I'm not dealing with paperwork." I didn't hear anything else. I didn't feel the IV in my hand or the tightness in my chest. Only a hollow space where my breath used to be. My son said that. I turned toward the window, too exhausted to cry. "Did he ever come?" I managed. She shook her head. "No. Someone else signed for you. A woman. She said she knew you. Not listed as family, but she stayed. I didn't ask her name." I couldn't. The nurse moved to change a monitor battery, and that's when I saw it clipped to the edge of my chart. A pale pink slip. New medical guardian assigned. I stared at it. I'd never signed anything. Never approved anyone. But someone had stepped in. Someone had saved my life when Mason refused to lift a finger. The nurse didn't notice my silence. She just kept working her voice, fading in and out. And I kept thinking, if this was the moment that nearly ended everything, maybe something else had already been ending for a long time. I closed my eyes. I wasn't afraid of dying anymore. I was afraid of waking up to the truth. I asked again, quieter this time. "Who signed the consent?" The nurse checked her notes and replied, "Jada Vaughn." The name didn't hit me at first. It slid past me like background noise, familiar, but too out of place to catch. Then it echoed back. Jada. I whispered it aloud. Jada Vaughn. The name opened a small door in my memory. A pair of hands always slightly trembling, a clipboard clutched tight. The smell of antiseptic and first-day nerves. "She was a student," I murmured. "Nursing rotation," I taught her. The nurse smiled. "She said you changed her life." I stared at the blanket across my legs, not trusting myself to speak. "She was listening to a police scanner, apparently. Heard your name, recognized it immediately. Drove here and insisted someone needed to sign. She didn't leave until you were out of surgery. Left her number in case you asked." I turned my face to the wall. That kind of loyalty doesn't come from nothing. I hadn't seen or spoken to Jada in 20 years? Maybe more. The nurse asked gently, "Would you like us to call her?" Part of me wanted to say no. I didn't want pity. I didn't want to see myself reflected in someone else's eyes, especially someone who saw me as strong once, but another part of me, the one that felt cold all morning, quietly said, "Yes." She came that afternoon. She stood in the doorway, hesitant, like she didn't want to cross a line. Her face had aged beautifully, lines of purpose, not exhaustion. "You came?" I asked. My voice broke halfway through. She nodded. "You taught me to show up. I just did what you would have done." I didn't mean to cry, but I did. Not from pain, at least not the kind the hospital could treat. She pulled a chair close, sat beside me like we'd done this every week, and in that moment, something fragile inside me bent in a new direction. Because someone I barely remembered had remembered me, and she'd come running when my own son didn't. The days blurred together in soft lights and the rhythmic hum of machines. Jada came by, each one never missing. She brought real coffee in a paper cup that steamed the room like something sacred. She fluffed my blankets without asking, spoke to the nurses like she belonged there, because in many ways she did. Her presence filled the air, filled something else too. Something I hadn't realized had been empty for a long time. What didn't come was my son. No calls, no messages. Not even a nurse popping in to say he'd left something at the front desk. I thought maybe he was waiting until I got home. Maybe he was uncomfortable with hospitals. But even those excuses started to thin. On the fourth day, a social worker came in with a folder and a clipboard. Her voice was kind but rehearsed. "We're planning your discharge, Ms. Wakefield. Will you have someone at home to assist you?" I smiled too quickly. My son's just been tied up with work. She didn't write anything, just looked at me. "Do you expect him to be involved in your recovery?" I opened my mouth. Closed it. She nodded slowly. "We'll plan with that in mind." She didn't judge me. That was almost worse. Later, when she thought I was asleep, Jada sat beside me and said quietly, "You're not going home alone. I've got a guest room. You can stay with me, just until you're steady." I wanted to say no. I should have. But the truth was the thought of dragging myself up my apartment stairs, heating my own soup, curling up alone in silence. It frightened me more than any surgery had. That night, I stared at my phone for nearly an hour. Remembered Mason at 12 after my husband died. Remembered working doubles, skipping meals so he could eat. Still no call. The next morning, at the nurse's suggestion, I updated my emergency contact. I crossed out my son's name. I wrote Jada's. My hand trembled for a moment. Then I signed, without hesitation. On the day of my discharge, the knock came sharp and fast, like someone who didn't care who they startled. I flinched. Jada looked toward the door, already halfway to stepping in front of me. Then it opened, and she didn't have the chance. Talia walked in, polished, perfect, unreadable. Her heels clicked like punctuation across the tile. She didn't smile. "No need to dramatize this," she said. Voice clipped. "It's Thanksgiving weekend. Mason's had obligations." I sat up slowly. My ribs ached more from her tone than the surgery. Talia crossed her arms, glancing at Jada like she was furniture. "He said you exaggerated the emergency. You're stable now. So what's the problem?" Jada's hands tightened around the handle of the wheelchair. "The problem is, she almost died." Talia gave a tight shrug. "People survive accidents every day." Mason had important guests. He couldn't just abandon them to come sign forms. I heard the words. I also heard the absence of any apology. I cleared my throat, surprised by the steadiness of my own voice. That was the moment I needed him. Talia's eyes flicked to mine, then away. She shifted, but held her ground. "He sent me to check on you," she said. "He cares." "He does." I tilted my head slightly. Then why didn't he call? Not once. That silenced her. Completely. She stared past me, jaw tight. I waited for something, anything, but no explanation came. Because there wasn't one. I nodded. "Calm now. I'm leaving. Please let Mason know." Jada moved behind me, wheeled me toward the hallway. As the elevator doors began to close, I looked back one last time. Talia was still standing there, arms crossed. Lips pursed. But behind the irritation, I caught something else, guilt. Small, sharp, real. And in that moment, the story I'd told myself for years that Mason was just busy, just tired, just trying, finally collapsed under its own weight. I'd carried the illusion, but it never carried me back. The first week at Jada's house passed in quiet care. Her place was small set, just beyond the edge of town, where the trees grew close and the nights were still. She made eggs in the morning, brought me tea in the afternoon, helped me shower without ever making me feel ashamed. She laid blankets out in the living room and told me not to worry about the stairs. "You need rest," she said. Not a hero badge. I hadn't felt cared for like that in years. Not managed, not visited out of duty, just cared for. Toward the end of the week, she brought me a soft folder. "When you're ready," she said, "start going through what matters. Just make sure everything reflects what you want now." I nodded. I knew what she meant. Back at my own apartment, I moved slower. The air felt heavier, like the walls had been waiting for me to notice something I'd refused to see. Photos of Mason were everywhere. His baby curls, his first soccer jersey, his graduation robe. I'd lined my life with evidence of him, as if by surrounding myself with proof I could make the bond real again. But the drawers told a different story. Letters I'd written, never answered. Cards I sent, returned unopened. Dinner invitations marked unread for weeks. I had spent years calling that neglect busy. Jada sat quietly as I opened old files. Insurance bank statements, the deed to this apartment. My will written 15 years ago, naming Mason as the sole heir. She didn't peer, just sat beside me folding laundry. But I could feel the weight in her silence. "You don't have to look," I said. She smiled softly. "I won't, unless you ask." Later that night, I lay in my own bed, staring at the ceiling. The pain in my chest wasn't just from surgery. I kept thinking about loyalty, the kind that shows up, and the kind that walks away, the kind that inherits your name, and the kind that saves your life. The message came on a Tuesday. Just one line: "Heard you're home. Recover well." No apology, no explanation, not even my name. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I placed the phone face down and walked away. 2 days later, he called. I watched it ring. The sound made my ribs tighten. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail. "Hey, Mom. I've been meaning to check in. Things got busy at the firm with year-end stuff. Hope you're doing okay." I listened to it twice. Not a single word about the hospital. Not even a crack in his voice that suggested he'd replayed that decision in his mind. I opened a new message window. My fingers hovered. Then I typed, "I needed you. You didn't come. I'm taking time to think." I hit send. That night, Jada came in with 2 bags of groceries and a worn expression. She didn't need to ask. She could feel it in the air. "He reached out," I said quietly. Jada paused at the counter. "Did it help, no?" She nodded, sat beside me without another word. No analyzing, no rescue, just presence. Later, I found myself in the kitchen. The lights dimmed, the sounds of evening soft in the background. I pulled out the old folder, the one with the will I wrote when Mason was still young enough to believe I was invincible. My fingers trembled over the edges. 50 years of being a mother had taught me that love was about doing the hard things, being there even when it was inconvenient, even when it hurt. But nearly dying had taught me something else. Obligation without love is just weight. I slid the old will aside, took a blank sheet, and I started to write. Slowly, carefully. My estate shall go to the person who showed up for me when my life depended on it. I didn't write the name. Not yet. But I knew. Tomorrow, I told myself. Tomorrow I'll finish it. The law office was tucked between a used bookstore and a florist, its windows shaded by half-drawn blinds and quiet intention. Inside, the light was soft, and nothing smelled like antiseptic or old paper. Only clean air and a sense of privacy. Mrs. Kendall greeted me with both warmth and professionalism. She didn't rush. She didn't blink when I explained what happened about the accident, about Mason, about Jada standing in the gap where my son should have been. When I finished, she folded her hands gently. "Do you want to remove your son entirely?" I didn't answer right away. There was no fire in me anymore. No rage, just a calm sadness that had settled deep into my bones. "I want my decisions to match my reality," I said. So we made the changes. Jada was listed as the executor and primary beneficiary. I asked that Mason be given one thing, a small cedar box I kept in my closet. Inside it, I'd place his father's ring, some photos from childhood, and a letter I hadn't written yet. The paperwork itself was simple. A few signatures, a witness, a notary. But my hand trembled when I reached the line about medical directives. The line that once had Mason's name. I signed it with slow, deliberate strokes. That evening, Jada reheated soup and asked what I wanted for dinner. She didn't ask about the lawyer. Grilled cheese, I said. She smiled like it was the perfect answer. Later, I sat at the kitchen table and wrote the letter. No accusations, no dramatic words, just the truth. I needed you. You didn't come. Someone else did. I folded it neatly and slipped it into the box. Then I placed the lid on and felt something close. Not everything, but something. I hadn't stopped loving my son, but I'd stopped waiting for him to love me back. It was Ruth who called, my late husband's sister. She'd heard I was home. She said there was a small gathering planned, just family, nothing formal. She hoped I'd come. I hesitated. My ribs still ached when I moved too quickly, but it wasn't the pain that made me pause. It was the knowing that I'd see him there. Still, I said yes. Not because I wanted to be seen, but because I wanted to stop hiding. Jada offered to drive. When we pulled up, she turned off the engine and said gently, "I can wait in the car." "No," I said. "Come in with me." The moment we stepped inside, the room stiffened. Conversations hushed. Dishes paused mid-pass. Eyes flicked and lowered. Mason was on the couch beside Talia. His hands were clasped so tightly, his knuckles had gone pale. He didn't look at me. A cousin Caroline, I think, approached carefully. "We heard something happened. At the hospital." "Are you all right now?" I nodded once. Then I spoke, not loudly, but clearly. "I survived." Someone made sure of that. Mason shifted, still didn't look up. I told them. Everything. The nurse's words, the refusal, the exact sentence he gave. "If she dies, just let me know." The room changed. It was like someone had cracked a window in midwinter. The discomfort slipped in quietly but wrapped around everyone. Mason finally snapped, "You're twisting things." I was overwhelmed. "You always make me feel guilty." My chest tightened, but I stayed steady. "I didn't ask for guilt," I said. "I asked for help." Talia tried to jump in, voice honey sweet and defensive. "He wasn't thinking straight." "He was." Ruth raised a hand. One look, and Talia fell silent. I looked around the room, not searching for approval, just making sure I had said what needed saying. "I'm healing," I said. "That's enough for today." Jada helped me out. The car was warm. The silence between us was warmer. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I just felt right. Not triumphant, not vindicated, just finished with pretending. It was cold the morning we pulled into my driveway for good. The kind of cold that clung to your sleeves and whispered winter was near. Jada parked, helped me up the walkway, and we stepped inside, together my home, but not quite the one I'd left. We moved slowly, adjusting things. The recliner came closer to the window. The lamp got shifted near the couch. Jada installed grab bars in the bathroom, fixed the cabinet that had always creaked too loudly, placed a basket of thick socks near my favorite chair. The space didn't just feel different. It felt safer. Not because of what changed, but because someone had cared enough to change it. Over tea that afternoon, I admitted something I hadn't said aloud. I thought I'd feel guilty about everything I signed. Jada looked up. Care shouldn't be a one-way memory. I stirred my cup, slowly thinking of all the Thanksgivings I spent sitting alone at a table for 3. The casseroles Mason never touched. The voicemails that were never returned. I had held on to the idea of family so tightly I nearly let it bury me. Later, I pulled out a small wooden chest from my bedroom closet. Inside were photographs, old letters, ticket stubs, scraps of time that had shaped me. One picture caught me Mason no older than 6, beaming at something behind the camera. I traced his smile with my thumb. The love hadn't vanished, not even now, but love and trust had parted ways. I placed the photo into a small velvet pouch and set it gently in the box I'd prepared for him. A keepsake, not a reconciliation. That evening, I stepped outside. Jada's daughter, quiet and sweet, was drawing circles on the concrete with pink chalk. She looked up and tilted her head. "You're Miss Corinna," she said thoughtfully. "Is it okay if I call you Cora?" Something caught in my throat. "Yes," I said. "I'd like that." She smiled wide and turned back to her chalk. And just like that, something new began to take root. The days moved gently after that. Weeks even. I regained strength in small, quiet ways, breathing without wincing, walking a little farther each morning, sleeping through the night without dreaming of hospitals. Jada came by every few days. Sometimes she brought groceries. Sometimes just her company. We didn't talk about the past much anymore. We didn't have to. What had been broken didn't need constant naming. We were building something forward instead. She always knocked first. She never assumed. That alone told me everything I needed to know. Then one afternoon, Mason texted, "Are we really doing this?" Over one mistake, I stared at the screen a while. I didn't feel heat rise in me. No grief, no longing, just a stillness that came with finally seeing things as they were. I typed back, "I'm open to a real conversation when you're ready to talk honestly. Until then, I need distance." I hit send. There was no reply. That weekend, the sun came up, soft and slow. I took my cane and stepped outside. My body moved better now. Not fast, but steady. Jada's little girl, Cora, was waiting at the curb in her red jacket. "Let's walk," she said already. Skipping ahead, she asked questions about every bird we passed, about every house, every mailbox. I answered, most of them. Laughed when I couldn't. My laugh startled me. It had been so long since I heard it in my own throat. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting. Not for a call. Not for a knock. Not for a version of love I kept hoping would return. My life didn't look like the one I once built around Mason. But it felt like mine again. Not perfect, not dramatic, but real. I'd almost died that night in the cold. Instead, I lived long enough to understand something deeper than blood. Family isn't just who you raise, it's who stays. It's who shows up without being asked,